Good morning, everybody. We're live from the birdhouse. We are getting into mid-May, and today we're talking about warblers because there are definitely a lot of them in the area right now, and we've got lots of different types. So I'll show you some of the different kinds you can see here. This is going to be most of them, not every single one you might possibly see, but these are going to be the most common that you might come across while out birding or even in your backyard. You never know. So if you have any questions, of course, you can put those in the comments. As always, we want to know what kind of things you're seeing either in your backyard or when you're out hiking, what kind of things you might be hearing. So now is that time of the year where you might get some kind of rare and different things coming into your backyard. And as always, you can put your comments and questions or even just say hi in the little comments box. So let's get started talking about warblers. And warblers are just some of the birds that are migrating through the area right now. So in spring migration, we can see up to 238 different types of birds in the area. So there's a whole bunch of different species that we might be able to see this month here in the Rochester area. And a lot of these migrants are coming from Central and South America. And as far as warblers go, about 30 species are commonly found in the Rochester area. So they come in quick. They can be kind of hard to see once the trees start to get leaves on them because they bounce around so much. They're usually high up in the trees. So now is a really good time to go out and look for them. And when you are looking for warblers, because they're usually up so high, you want to watch out for warbler neck, which is just kind of getting a crick in your neck from the angle from just looking so high up in the trees. So the name for that is warbler neck if you're feeling a little sore from all your warbler watching. So it's treacherous this time of the year. As far as migration goes, we've been tracking the migration maps. And last week in the central U.S., it was pretty active migration. It was about around 320 million birds flowing through. Right now, we're going into the 400 millions as far as birds flowing through and migrating through. And you can see in upstate New York here, it's getting to be brighter and brighter. So we are seeing some increase in migration activity. As far as orioles go, people are seeing them. It doesn't seem to be the huge numbers that people have gotten in the past. So I'm wondering this week, as we do start to see more of this migration activity coming through, if there will be more oriole sightings. So people are getting them. But as far as the numbers go, they're reporting not as many so far. So same with hummingbirds. People are starting to get hummingbirds. I haven't seen any yet in my feeders, but it's only a matter of time. So there's some really big numbers of birds that are going to be flying through the area this week. So you never know what you might get stopping by in your backyard. As far as local places to go to see warblers that are really great hot spots, there's a place called Island Cottage Woods, and that's a Genesee Land Trust property off of 390. So that is one place you can go to see warblers this time of the year. There's another place called Firehouse Woods, which is right around the corner of Long Pond Road and Edgemere. And there's a church across the street you can park at. There's actually a trail behind the church as well, which is a really good spot for looking for warblers this time of the year. But this is also a hot spot for warbler activity this time of the year. And then Cobb's Hill is another great place. Cobb's Hill in the wooded area called Washington Grove, another great hotspot for warblers this year. If you're looking for more detailed places to go, you can visit the Rochester Birding Association website that has a whole map of different birding hotspots, and that website is rochesterbirding.org. So that's a really great resource to look for different areas to go birding. But let's look at some of the different warblers that will come through the area. Most of them are going to be brightly colored, but not all, like this Ovenbird. The Ovenbird almost looks like a smaller version of a thrush. And you'll see a lot of these birds are all coming, some from some pretty good distances. So a lot of them Mexico, Central America, or South America. So they're making a pretty large migration flight. So the blue is going to be where they spend the winter. The yellow on all these maps will be where they're just passing through. And then the orange is going to be their breeding range. So that is where they will spend all spring and all summer as they're finding a mate and laying their eggs and raising their young. So this is the Ovenbird. They have a song that is kind of almost like a forceful type of call, and it sounds like they're saying teacher, teacher, teacher. And I can pull up what that sounds like, and you're going to mostly hear these birds calling in the woods. So this is more of a woodland type of species. So their call kind of sounds like teacher, 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 teacher. Think of almost like a Carolina wren, but less of a melody to it. It's kind of more forceful than the Carolina wren song, which is kind of more like a sing-songy type of thing. They can often be found foraging on forest floors. They get their name because their nest looks like an old-fashioned oven. They're going to be a little bit larger than your average warbler. So think of like your yellow warbler. If you've got a good feel for that size of like a yellow warbler or yellow-rumped warbler, Ovenbird's going to be bigger. They have a pretty distinctive white eye ring there. So they've got that white around their eye. They've got quite a few spots on them. Their legs are pink. They've got black and orange stripes on the top of their head, which is a pretty good characteristic to identify them with. And then their tail's often cocked upwards, almost like a wren again. So this is the Ovenbird, and here's one in its nest, and you can see that it does almost look like an old-fashioned oven there that it's kind of burrowed into, and you can see the crown on the top of their head pretty well there with the black stripes with the orange in between. So that is your Ovenbird. And then if you're by the water, you might see this warbler, which isn't, again, not going to be your typical brightly colored warbler. This is a northern water thrush, like their name suggests. They're going to be by water, so a place with cattails, so marshes, ponds. They like to forage at the edge of still water, so you're probably not going to see them by a stream or any kind of real active moving water. They'll eat aquatic insects and small salamanders, and they often bob the rear of their body. So their movements, their body language can help you identify them as well. They also look pretty similar to a thrush. They have what's called a buffy eyebrow. So right here, the stripe above their eye. They have long legs and a long body. So you can see how elongated they are. And they've got a lot of streaking on them as well. So that is your northern water thrush. And now getting into some of the more colorful warblers. This is the golden winged warbler, and you can see how they get their name. They do have that golden patch on their wing. The male is going to have that dark mask over their eye, and the female will have that as well, just not as pronounced. So this is your golden wing warbler. They're overall kind of silvery in color. They've got gold on their wings and also on the top of their head. They have a black mask and a black throat, and they're slim with a sharp bill. So some of these warblers will have kind of more of a rounded bill. Golden wing warbler, it's going to be more of a sharp bill. And there's a lot of different types of warblers, so it can be hard if you're in the field and they're bopping all around to identify them. What I highly recommend is getting something like this, like a fold-out guide that's just warblers. If you've got something like the Birds of New York book, for example, that's a great book, but it's not going to have every warbler species in it. And if you've got a larger book like a Sibley's book or, maybe National Geographic Guide of all Eastern birds, those can be kind of cumbersome if you're out in the field and you're trying to identify what it is you just saw. So I really like these folding guides. It'll give you kind of a quick view. So you can unfurl it, and you'll get a quick view of all the different types of warblers. So these are really, really nice. They're small. You can fit them in your pocket or in a backpack pretty easily. So this can be really, really helpful with identification as can that Merlin ID app. If you're doing sound ID, if the birds are starting to be kind of chatty, that can really help identify some of these birds as well. So we just had the golden wing warbler. Here's the blue winged warbler. It's an overall very yellowish colored bird, and it has a bluish, kind of grayish wing, and it has a black eye line. So it's got a black streak that goes through its eye. So it almost goes right from its black beak right through, just a stripe through the eye. And it also has a pointy bill, just like that golden wing warbler. And the wings are like a bluish kind of gray color there. So that is your blue winged warbler. This is one that's come up quite a bit. This is the black and white warbler. Some of you guys have sent in photos of the black and white warbler that you've seen. And it's covered in black and white stripes. Males have a black ear patch, it's called right here. And you can see them crawling up and down trees. So tree trunks especially, or branches of trees, they'll climb all around on trees. So where a lot of these other warblers are bouncing around in the branches up top and the tops of trees, these guys are going to be more on the tree itself, so on the bark of the tree somewhere. And this is the female who doesn't have that ear patch here. And here's some photos from the past that you guys have sent in, black and white warbler, just in your backyard. So they are one you might just happen to see coming through your backyard. Kind of a nondescript warbler here. This is called the Tennessee Warbler, and they tend to be more just migrating through, so we're not going to have them all summer long. But the Tennessee Warbler is going to be quite small. Again, a really thin, pointy bill. It's got a gray cap on the top of its head. So that's a pretty good identifying characteristic. Doesn't have any strong wing bars. Some of these birds will have stripes on their wings, which can help identify them. There's none of that. And it has a pretty short tail also. We'll see some warblers that have pretty long tails. The Tennessee Warbler has a pretty short tail. So not all of these warblers are going to be brightly colored and bold. The Tennessee Warbler is a fine example of one that's kind of just a dullish, grayish yellow color. Kind of same as the orange-crowned warbler. So thin, small, pointy bill. So their bill is quite small. They're just kind of an olive-colored, yellowish, olive-ish color. They have a very faint eye line, and they do have a broken eye ring there, so you can see a little bit of that on their eye. And you rarely see the sign of their orange crown, so that can be difficult. If you happen to see the orange crown like this, that's a perfect that is the perfect display there of the orange-crowned warbler, but you can rarely see that. Most of the time, you're not going to see any of that orange on the top of their head. So take a look if you see something that's very just olive in color. They have that broken eye ring, so it almost looks like it's in two spots. Then they have a very faint line that goes through their eye. So that is an orange-crowned warbler. Now, something that's a little bit more pronounced in color is going to be the Nashville Warbler. Here's the male on the left and the female on the right. So another small warbler with a short tail. They have yellow on their below on their body, a very olive green back here. They have a strong white eye ring, and they will have a crown patch, but it's usually not very visible. And some interesting facts about them was first seen in Nashville, so that's how they got their name. And they'll use porcupine quills as nesting materials. So some pretty interesting facts there about the Nashville warbler. So another species we have coming into the area. Mourning Warbler looks a little bit different than some of the others we've seen. So Mourning Warbler, just like mourning dove, spelled M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G. Mourning Warbler are going to be a bit larger in size than your typical, say, yellow warbler, and they have this gray hood on the top of their head. And that gray hood will then go to a black marking on their chest, and they're very yellow underneath. They don't have any eye ring. They don't have any wing bars. So the thing that's really going to help you identify them is going to be that dark gray hood and the black on their chest. So that is your Mourning Warbler. Common yellowthroat. Some of you had sent of common yellowthroat last week, and they are definitely back. And the male common yellowthroat will have this very, very black mask, and the female doesn't, but the female still will have a very yellow throat, like its name suggests. So they are coming into our area now. They have a pretty long tail. So some of these others that we were looking at have a really kind of short, stumpy tail, but the common yellowthroat has quite a long tail. The males will have that black mask, and the females don't have that, but they will both have that really yellowish colored throat. So keep your eyes out for common yellow throat. Here's the female again. So very, very yellow throat. Hooded warbler. So hooded warbler females can be a little tough because they do kind of look like a yellow warbler, but they're not going to have that streaking that the yellow warbler has. But you can see how they get their name. The males look like they do have a hood. So they've got a bright yellow face, and they've got a black hood that surrounds it. So they're almost like the opposite of that common yellow throat that had the black mask and then the yellow around it. The hooded warbler looks like it's wearing a black hood, and it wraps around underneath their chin. So it's pretty olive-ish in color, so olive colored back and then yellowish colored belly. So that's your hooded warbler. Now this one looks quite a bit different than any other warbler we've got. It's almost the same orange as you would see on an oriole. This is the American Redstart. The males are black with a bright orange, and then the females are more of a grayish, brownish color with yellow. Where the male has orange, the female will have spots of yellow. And this is their breeding range. They are they're a medium-sized warbler. They have a wide, flat bill, and they have a very long, expressive tail. So their tail will sometimes flare out, and you can see the patches of orange that are on their tail. They're mostly black with bright orange patches. So if you see something that has some orange on it, that's bright, but it's not an oriole, it's probably going to be the American Redstart, especially if it's overall very dark in color. We'll see another warbler that has a lot of orange on it, but it looks significantly different. So this is the American Redstart. So a really good place to go to see them locally is Thousand Acre Swamp, if you're familiar with that out in Penfield. We've seen American Redstart out there pretty frequently, and they nest out there as well. So here is the female again. You can see her wide, kind of flat bill as well in this photo. Cape May Warbler is really a pretty one. Looks kind of different than any of the others we've seen. It's a warbler again with a short tail. So we've got some with long tails, some with short tails. This is another one with a short tail, thin bill, and it has a chestnut cheek patch. So that's going to be a really good characteristic of it there, and black streaks on a yellow breast. So that's your Cape May Warbler. A lot of these guys are very yellowish in color. Here's the female Cape May Warbler. She's got streaking on her like a yellow warbler might, but these streaks are black. They're not going to be that reddish color that the yellow warbler has. This is a very neat one called the Cerulean Warbler. There's not many warblers that we've got locally that are blue. So this warbler is almost like a very light sky blue color. They tend to sit in a horizontal posture. They have wing bars as well. So they've got 2 white wing bars. They have dark streaking on their back. And the females have a whitish colored eyebrow above their eye here. So not a very common warbler around here, but Montezuma has a really healthy population of them, one of the most healthy populations on the East Coast. And I believe it was just last year that there was one seen in Cobbs Hill. So you just never know where you might see them. So this is the Cerulean Warbler, a really, really beautiful bird here. Northern Parula, we had photos of Northern Parula sent in last week as well. Northern Parula are going to be, again, kind of like a bluish grayish color. They're small with a short tail. They have an olive, kind of like an olive yellow patch on their back, which you can see kind of in this photo here. So they've got a really yellowish patch, like kind of blotch in the back of their back. They have bright yellow throat, and then they do have this chestnut colored band that goes over their breast there. So kind of a few different colors. So most of these will have a couple different colors on them. The Parula has quite a few different colors. And then they do have that, not quite an eye ring or broken eye ring. So just a little bit of patch of white below and above their eye. So that is your northern Parula. And you never know what might come to feeders. Every once in a while, we get reports of different types of birds coming to feeders. And this was sent in by Lisa of a northern Parula on her Oriole feeder. So you just never know what you might see coming to your feeders. The Magnolia Warbler looks a little bit similar to the Yellow-rumped Warbler, but they have lots of dark streaking and what's called a black necklace. It almost looks like that they're wearing a black necklace. They have a black tip tail, which is also long, and they've got this black mask that goes over their face. This is a really, really pretty warbler here called the Magnolia. So they've got that black mask over their face like some of the other warblers we've seen, but then they have this black necklace, which will help you identify them. So it's pretty amazing, all the different types that we do have here. This is called the Bay-breasted Warbler. Looks quite different than the others we've been looking at. This one's quite bulky in size, and it's very chestnut brown. So we haven't seen too many with chestnut brown coloration. We've seen some that have little patches of chestnut brown, but this one is overall very brown in color, and it's got a black face and a cream-colored neck patch. So different color scheme than most of the other warblers that we just have been looking at here. This is my personal favorite. This is called the Blackburnian Warbler. So this is the other species besides the Redstart that's going to have bright orange on it. But whereas that Redstart was very black in its face and most of its body, the Blackburnian Warbler is more like black and white striped, and it has a bright orange face. So really, really beautiful. They are pretty small, and they do have that brilliant orange throat and face. They have a black crown on the top of their head, and they do have this little triangle that patch that's by their ear. So that is your Blackburnian Warbler. Really gorgeous bird that's starting to be reported in the area now as well. This is going to be one of your most common that you'll see. So this is the Yellow Warbler. This is a good one to get accustomed to if you are just starting to learn your warblers. They are pretty small, the round head, very black eye. They have a really stout bill. So we've been looking at some that have very sharp and small bills, but they have more of a stout bill. And they do have those chestnut, almost reddish colored streaks on their breasts. So they are also prolific singers. They love to sing. So a pretty common warbler you can find here in the area all summer long, and they do sing even into the summer. So this is a good one to kind of get accustomed to, and you might even see them in your trees. Every once in a while, I hear one singing from a tree in the neighborhood. So they are definitely around in larger numbers than some of these other warblers would be. This is a chestnut-sided warbler. Like its name suggests, it has these chestnut patches on the side of its body. And they're going to be another kind of a stockier warbler with a stout bill. So they don't have as the small sharp bills that some of the other species have had. They often will hold their tail above their wings, just like this picture shows. So their tail's up and the wings are kind of pointed down. They do have a yellow crown on the top of their head with a black mask, another type of warbler with the black on its face, and then they've got these chestnut patches on the side of their body. So chestnut-sided warbler. Now this one looks a little bit similar to the black and white warbler. This is called the Blackpoll Warbler. To me, it almost looks like that black and white warbler mixed with a chickadee. If they were to kind of merge the two together, it's got kind of the same markings as a chickadee does in its head with that black patch. They are going to be a small warbler with a short tail. They do have that black cap. They've got white on their cheeks, and they have super, super orange legs. So this picture here, especially of the female, shows just how orange their legs are. So that is your Blackpoll Warbler. Not the most common that you'll see around here, but they definitely are around. So if you see a warbler that's black and white and it's up in a tree, not on the trunk, could very well be a Blackpoll Warbler. Some of you guys were reporting these last week. Black-throated blue warbler, one of the other species we have here that is bluish in color. So we saw the Cerulean Warbler, which is like a sky blue. This black-throated blue warbler, just like its name suggests, it's got a black throat and its back is blue. So pretty easy to identify there as far as the males go. They're fairly large. They have a white square patch on their wings, and then that blue is really hard to fuse with any other kind of species. And we've had reports here and there of them coming to oriole feeders as well, especially if the weather suddenly gets cool early in migration season. So keep your eyes out at your feeders. You just never know, especially those oriole feeders this time of the year. So we do have a few more. Palm warbler. You guys have been sending in photos of palm warbler. We got a very overall yellow warbler, but it has that rusty cap on the top of its head. They're pretty large and they've got that rounded belly. So that's your palm warbler. So look for that chest, the rusty colored cap on the top of the head for the palm warbler. There's a photo sent in by Bob from years past of a palm warbler in his yard. Pine warbler are another species. They kind of come in earlier in the season. Like their name suggests, you can find them by pine trees or in pine trees. And they can be a little bit difficult to identify, but look for a very overall yellow bird with a yellow throat. And they do have these wing bars as well. They've got these 2 white wing bars. They're going to be pretty large as well with a stout bill, so they don't have the sharp bill. So this is your pine warbler. Another really common one you will probably come across if you do any kind of birding outside right now is going to be your yellow-rumped warbler. And they do have that yellow patch on their rump. And they also have a black mask that goes over their face. They have a white throat, and they have the yellow rump patch there and yellow on the sides and yellow on the top of their head. So really common bird to find outside right now, that both the yellow warbler and the yellow rumped warbler are both pretty common warblers that you probably, if you spend any time outside, you'll see right now. Black-throated green warbler. So we saw the black-throated blue warbler. There's also a black-throated green warbler, which to me doesn't look super green, but that's the name. So like its name suggests, it does have that really dark black throat. It has a bright yellow face, and the back is kind of like, it almost to me looks like yellow mixed with some black, which gives it that greenish appearance. And it does have quite a bit of streaking on its sides as well. So there is a black-throated green warbler as well as the black-throated blue warbler. So the Canada warbler is another species. They kind of look similarly to that magnolia warbler, but they don't have that full necklace going on. So they've got a long tail. They do have an eye ring. They do have a black necklace, but it's not going to be as bold and big as that magnolia warbler. And they have a very brightly colored yellow breast. So that is your Canada warbler. Another yellow bird we've got here. This is the Wilson's warbler. Overall very yellow with a black patch on the top of its head. And that has a really thin bill as well and a very dark black eye. So this is your Wilson's warbler with that little black patch on the top of its head. And finally, not a warbler at all, but I like to throw it in because it is a migratory bird. It's super brightly colored, and people do sometimes get it in their backyard, especially if you have some kind of a moving water feature or a feeder with sunflower hearts. This is your Scarlet Tanager, and there's really nothing else that looks quite like this. We've got cardinals, of course, that are bright red, but the Scarlet Tanager is very, very bright red with those black patches on its wings. So it's really hard to confuse it with anything else. The female is more of a yellowish colored with grayish wings, not nearly as dark. But Scarlet Tanager, this time of the year, you never know. Keep your eyes out on your feeders because you just might see them passing through. And they're going to be quite large and stocky, so much bigger than these warblers that we've been looking at. So those are the Scarlet Tanager. And then as far as attracting warblers to your backyard, it's not as easy as attracting orioles or hummingbirds because they're going to be eating a lot of insects. So putting mealworms out can certainly help. Water is great because they all do need some kind of a water source. So if you have a bird bath, that's ideal. Some kind of a bird bath with the solar fountain in it is always great because that moving water does help bring different birds in. And then sometimes they will come to feeders. So here's a pine warbler at a bird feeder. We saw some pictures of different warblers like the northern parula at the oriole feeder. So those are a really good thing to keep out and keep fresh as far as your oranges and your jelly. But then also if you have some kind of a feeder that has mixed seed in it, you might want to throw some sunflower hearts in there if it doesn't have sunflower hearts already. Sunflower hearts are just the inside of the sunflower, so they don't have the shell on them. And that can be good for these smaller warblers that have those thinner bills. They don't need to crack open that shell with their beak. So that can help draw in some of these birds. So every once in a while, we get people that'll have warblers on their bird feeders. Not super common, but you never know, especially this time of the year. So if you have any questions, absolutely put them in the comments. We'd love to know what kind of things you guys are seeing. You can put those in there as well. If you just want to say hi, that is great too. So let's see, Bob is on. He says, good morning. Spotted an indigo bunting this morning in the backyard. So that's a great sighting, the indigo bunting. So indigo buntings are brightly colored blue. I can pull up a picture here, my Birds of New York book that I just pulled up. So this, let's see if you can see it there. This is an indigo bunting. So every once in a while, people will get them at their feeders. Again, not a super common bird, but this time of the year, they will pass through. They're going to eat, in general, they tend to eat some of the smaller seeds. Like you might even see them coming to your Niger feeder or something with millet, and they'll eat the sunflower hearts as well. So indigo bunting is a really cool bird to have in the backyard this time of the year. Alyssa says, I had 2 mallard ducks in my yard this morning in the city. They waddled around for about 15 minutes before taking off. So Alyssa had some mallard ducks in the yard, which is pretty fun. Sue says, those yellow birds are all so pretty. Yes, the warblers are just gorgeous birds. Lisa says, good morning. I have 3 male orioles that feud over the feeder. I have even added another dish that they are using, but still not happy with each other. So Lisa certainly sounds like she has lots of orioles. So far it seems like the word out is people are getting orioles, just not in the bigger numbers they had last year. But we're still early enough in the season that some of them might still be flowing in. So don't get too discouraged if you're not seeing that many. Randy says, good morning, Liz, and every birdie. He also says was 5 feet away from a pileated woodpecker in the driveway looking for grubs in a tree stump. Today, a rose-breasted grosbeak at the feeders until a blue jay chased it away. Video and images on my page. So Randy's got some cool bird activity there, including a pileated woodpecker and a rose-breasted grosbeak. So that's awesome. I had some rose-breasted grosbeaks last week, but I haven't seen any in the past couple days. I'm hoping they come back. Let's see. Margaret says, had 2 smallish birds on the ground in the last couple of days, scratching the ground, kind of cinnamon colored crest and eyebrow streak. Could it have been American tree sparrows? So possibly it's getting a little late in the season for tree sparrows, but they could be chipping sparrows, especially if they're small. If they're smaller than, say, your average house sparrow, they could very well be chipping sparrows. That's kind of their behavior. They tend to scratch around on the ground like that as well. So here's a picture, that same Birds of New York book here, of a chipping sparrow. So that would be my best guess, especially if they're kind of small. The tree sparrows are going to be about the same size as like your house sparrow would be. Let's see. Lynn is saying, good morning. I'm wondering if anyone has had blackbirds chase away the orioles. I had a pair and then a few blackbirds came into the scene and I'm not seeing my orioles. I took away the chickadee mix and put up safflower. So the blackbirds are gone. Fingers crossed. It's definitely a possibility, especially if you're getting the grackles. They can chase away lots of different birds. So Oriole feeders, I keep my Oriole feeders separate just because of that, just so they don't have to compete with the other seed feeders. So I just have mine on a couple small hooks kind of out in the back of my yard. And that kind of helps because not a lot of birds are going after the jelly and the oranges. So there's not all that competition. So if you do have your Oriole feeders mixed in with your seed feeders and your Niger feeders or suet feeders, your Orioles might get scared away more so than usual. So hopefully that helps. It certainly wouldn't be uncommon to have birds chased away by blackbirds like grackles. Let's see. Randy says, need to tell a neighbor to fill bird bath with solar sprinkler. Yes, the solar sprinklers are awesome. Let's see. Sue says, have seen a grackle with a partial whitetail for the past month in our yard. Okay, so you might have a grackle that has some leucism to it, or it's leucistic is what they're called, where they're lacking some pigment of their feathers. That's what it sounds like that might be, which is a pretty neat to see every once in a while. We get people sending in photos of that kind of thing. So that's always neat. So it looks like that's everybody's comments and questions. We had a lot of photos of warblers today. So I didn't want to throw in too much more because we had so many slides. But on Saturday, we'll be back with another broadcast, and we will share your photos and your sightings and talk about even more birds that are coming into the area. So not only are the warblers and we've got other thrushes and vireos and shorebirds. So there's a lot of birds flowing into the area, and we'll give you an update on those and different ways you might be able to attract them to your yard. And we will be back on Saturday at 10 a.m. And until then, you guys have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.